Hello, I am Alonso Sanchez, double bass player, jazz bass player, electric bass player, based out of California Bay Area, San Francisco, San Jose. Currently living in Mexico City, and I just wanted to make a quick little video addressing a couple of questions that I've gotten on TikTok and on Instagram on DMs, and just kind of cover a topic that people ask me about and that I think is important. And it's about where to pluck on the double bass, or like the way that we pluck. I think what's helped me a lot was, of course, taking lessons with teachers, but also kind of watching some YouTube videos of how the greats used to do it, right? So how Ray Brown used to pluck, Christian McBride, Scott LaFaro, Eddie Gomez, and each person has their different style of plucking. But I'm a firm believer that listening to the record helps, and then watching a performance of somebody playing helps too, because it kind of helps narrow down what might work for you, what might not work for you. But I think there are some general kind of, I wouldn't call them rules, but some pointers as to where to pluck. So I think it was Carl Allen called it this part of the fretboard, the fingerboard, the butterfly zone. You don't want to plug here, which is kind of, closer to where the neck stops, right? And he called it the butterfly zone because it's very like mellow, kind of chill. And I wouldn't say never pluck there, right? Maybe for a ballad, might be nice to kind of get like a different timbre. But like there's not a lot of tone up here. No matter how hard I pluck too, you can hear kind of the sound. Some of the attack is getting lost. So the way that worked for me, and the way that I was kind of guided towards, is plugging a little bit further down the fingerboard, right? So not up here. Up here could work too, but I found like the best sound that I've gotten is from plucking closer to the bridge. You can already kind of hear a difference, right? Like, I'm gonna pluck just as hard up here. But you can hear there's a little bit more of that kind of percussive sound to it. So just for an example, I'm just gonna walk a blues up here. That's one thing too. The other thing that has personally worked for me, that I found kind of punches through a lot more, is kind of plucking. I don't know if you can tell where my calluses are, but and I have a blister currently. But like kind of sideways, right? And I've seen people do it. I call it a flick because I'm kind of like flicking it. It's not necessarily like a pluck, right? It's more of like a flick, like I'm kind of doing this, like I'm, rapping or something. And this is the part of my thumb that is right here, right next to the board. And this part, I wish you could see it, but this part of my thumb doesn't really go in, and it doesn't really come out that much. It kind of stays just around there. Like it's this part right here, this little area, like kind of where the knuckle is, and that part just kind of stays there, and it pivots. So it doesn't really go in. It doesn't go in when I'm on the G string, right? It doesn't go all the way in. It doesn't come all the way out. And this is for walking, of course. For soloing, it can differ, right? But yeah, it's kind of right there, and it pivots a lot, and it helps me kind of do that flicking motion. And I've seen John Clayton do this, and yeah, right, it's kind of like this kind of motion, right? So that's the way I do it, and I think it sounds pretty good. that's one thing. And then I think the last thing that I kind of want to mention about plucking, and again, this is what's worked for me and what I've learned. It could be completely different for you as long as you're getting a good sound, a sound that you're happy with, and most importantly, a sound that the other people in the band are happy with, right? So maybe you're happy with your sound, but if somebody's telling you, hey man, can I get a little bit more, more percussive attack, more punch to your sound? If it's one person and everybody else says it's fine, maybe don't worry about it. But if it's multiple people that are coming to you and you're like, yeah, man, like I want more of a percussive sound, maybe it'd be nice, hit the shed and reconsider the way you pluck. But one more thing that I see a lot of people do, and people have asked me, like, yeah, I'm not getting that sound. And they might be doing this, and they might be doing the flicking thing, but they're depending too much on their fingers, right? So check this out, right? If this is a really weak muscle, right? Like, imagine like trying to slap with somebody like in the face by just doing that. Like, that's not gonna do much damage, right? Maybe that's a very violent analogy, right? But what do you do when you snap? Or like think about like throwing a ball, right? Like if you're throwing a ball, you don't just use your wrist or you don't just use your fingers, right? If you're throwing a ball, you use your whole arm, right? And it's not necessarily like me using my whole arm to plug, like I'm not going, because your arm is going to get tired that way. It's a controlled motion. It's hard for me to explain, but here's what not to do, or not what not to do, but here's what I wouldn't do, right? Just relying on my fingers. Now listen to the difference. I could be here, right, by the bridge, like I said, and I could maybe, have my thumb here and it's pivoting and I'm kind of flicking, but I'm just going to use my fingers. And even if I'm plucking really hard, my fingers aren't strong enough to really kind of get that big sound, right? So I consider it, instead of it just being this kind of flicking with my wrist, it's kind of like a whole kind of arm movement. And as you can see, it's not like, like chicken wing, like super hard. It's very light, kind of just like that, right? It's hard to explain, but I bet if you try it at home, you'll get it, right? And I'm really just kind of, making sure that I'm using my whole arm. And it helps me keep time better personally. I like to rush a lot, right? And if I'm just kind of using my fingers and my wrist, I can move that muscle faster than I can move my whole arm, right? For faster tempos, you'll change it up, right? Maybe you might use a little bit more finger, a little bit more wrist, a little less arm. But for blues or like a medium slow tempo, definitely using kind of this motion, right? And I'm gonna go like that blues again, and I'm gonna do one chorus of fingers and one chorus of arm, right? So check it out. So those are some tips, First one, don't pluck up here. Try getting a little lower towards the bridge and the fingerboard. Second one, make sure that this is more of a pivoting, and I'm using the sides of my fingers to really kind of dig in, and not so much like, like the side of my finger. It's more of like my actual, fingertip. And yeah, make sure you get your arm in there. Make sure it feels good. If your arm gets tired, it means you're doing it too hard. If your arm, if you practice in front of a mirror, if you see that you're really relying on your fingers, get a little bit more arm in there. And I would recommend just even in front of a mirror, spend some time just plugging some open strings. Right? If you're in front of a mirror and you see this, or on your phone too, you'll see the difference and you'll hear it too. So have fun, hit the shed, and if I have any more questions, maybe I'll do some more videos. Cool.